Coming to you from my home, not in the studio this week, as you might have imagined would be the case, but a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling. We're not joined with Brandon Clements, we're not in the studios, but the Heel to Face podcast goes on, and it starts right now.
So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
Coming to you from my house, Jared Wicks here. Follow me on Twitter at KRockJared. This is the Heel to the Face podcast. As I mentioned, Brandon Clements not with us this week. Hopefully, maybe he can join us in a week or two from now while this is still going on in the world. But nevertheless, the Heel to the Face podcast is on the air because there is just so much in the world of professional wrestling to talk about. But the first thing I know, yes, we are standing in front of the infamous, famous Jared House of Hats. I thought it'd be a pretty cool backdrop. If we're going to do a backdrop inside our house, might as well pick my famous backdrop, which is quite a wall of hats. You probably can't see on the camera here, but it actually goes down even a little bit further off camera. But nevertheless, there's a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling this week. We are filming this on a Saturday morning. Now, since we were last with you, other than the talk that I talked with you briefly about the fact that Wrestlemania would be taking place at the Performance Center, our last full episode of the Heel to the Face podcast came about a week and a half ago, and my goodness, in a week and a half, things sure did change. So a week and a half ago, we were still holding out hope that we'd be attending, me, myself, and Brandon Clements. We'd be taking the Heel to the Face podcast to Rochester for All Elite Wrestling, which did take place this past Wednesday in a closed-up Daly's Place inside the TIAA-FF Stadium, or outside of that in Jacksonville, Florida, which is one of the properties that Tony Khan owns, as his family owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they had that facility as, I guess, their quote-unquote version of the Performance Center, where they could host an event with nobody in attendance. They did that, and what an episode of Dynamite it was. And for weeks and even months, we speculated that this episode of Dynamite would have the debut of Brody Lee, which it did. Unfortunately, it wasn't the debut of Brody Lee for the fact they were saving it for him to debut in his hometown of Rochester, New York. Unfortunately, the show went on. He did debut. It wasn't in Rochester, as you know. And either way, AEW put on a great show, or at least the best show that they could do with no live audience. Now, since we last talked to you, there have been 2 SmackDowns and a Monday Night Raw that took place in front of no audience at the Performance Center. There's been a ton of news when it comes to Wrestlemania. Now, about a week and a half ago when we had our full show, the hope was that we were still going to be attending Wrestlemania. And then in a few days' time, this past Monday, it was announced that Wrestlemania would take place live with nobody in attendance at the Performance Center. And then as days went on, more information came out noting that the event will be a 2-day Wrestlemania. And not just a 2-day Wrestlemania, but hosted by Rob Gronkowski, formerly of the New England Patriots and the NFL. And it looks now that the current news when it comes to Wrestlemania is the fact that a lot of it might be pre-taped and from different locations. WWE has kind of already confirmed on their website that it won't just take place at the Performance Center, but it'll be taped or take place from many locations. And there have been many strong in the back who have said that it looks like SmackDown and Raw in the upcoming weeks when it comes to certain matches might be pre-taped because, as you're well aware, we are living in uncertain times, and how long the wrestling and how long we can tape matches seems to be uncertain. We don't know what kind of world we're going to step into tomorrow. Everything seems to be changing by the hour. So it seems like WWE is trying to get ahead of itself and pre-tape some matches for Monday Night Raw as well as SmackDown. And it also seems to be a pretty strong rumor that that could be the case for WrestleMania itself. Now, the fact that these are all closed off to the public means that it's possible to pre-tape matches for WrestleMania from various locations with the hope that most of the results won't get out and they can even still, in some theory, say it is live. But let's focus on WrestleMania just for a second here. The WWE actually released shirts this morning for those of you who are like myself and we're hoping that WrestleMania just gets canceled or at least postponed. It becomes less and less likely by the day that WWE is pulling a ruse on us and that it is not going to take place because it seems like it is. WWE on WWE Shop today released 2 different WrestleMania shirts that have the instead of "I was there" written on the back, says "I wasn't there." Now, it seems too these shirts also declude or remove the fact that it is going to take place or was scheduled to take place in Tampa, Florida as well. Now, I'm not going to buy one of these shirts to kind of tongue-in-cheek say I wasn't there. But nevertheless, it seems like WWE is full steam ahead. It seems like the fact that they have a chance to film some matches before anything can really take place. So if you were holding out hope, then maybe in a week and a half or 2 weeks' time that everything just gets a kibosh put on it when it comes to the government, when it comes to local officials, well, we still might be getting WrestleMania nonetheless because they could be taping those matches as we speak. Goldberg on Friday Night SmackDown was there against Roman Reigns, so for all we know, they could have filmed that match at SmackDown or after SmackDown went off the air last night. We don't know. That's the, I guess, beauty for WWE of doing this all without fans and in a closed environment. Now, in my eyes, why I believe that WrestleMania is a 2-night affair is kind of twofold. One, because an event taking place with all these matches on hand with no crowd would definitely seem to get long and tireless, and I don't think fans would want to watch. I mean, we've already heard the disclaimers and the hatred in the past that fans are getting kind of sick and tired of 7-hour WrestleManias, and that's with fans in attendance. So without fans in attendance, without the pomp and circumstance, without the big stage setups, you know, it seems like the best way to do this is 2 small doses. Now, the other aspect of why this might be a 2-day event is the fact that, well, WrestleMania, as me and some friends have talked about when they decided it was going to be at the Performance Center, kind of came across the realization that just the amount of people in the back are more than 50 to 100 people that are recommended to be in a group at one time. So just WrestleMania in front of no fans with all those wrestlers on hand would probably still be tough to do if they want to follow the quote-unquote CDC guidelines of having a group of less than 50 people together, or the current guidelines are less than 10 people together. Now, as we've seen with SmackDown, as we've seen with Raw, they've been doing a good job of keeping less than 10 people together. This past week on SmackDown, it was just Michael Cole on announcing. We haven't seen Corey Graves in a little while. I'm not too sure why that is the case. He wasn't on SmackDown 2 weeks ago. Triple H filled in for him, and this past week, it was just Michael Cole on the announce team, so I don't know what that means for WrestleMania. But if that is the case of trying to just keep the attendance down when it comes to personnel, costume designers, and the talent themselves, then maybe that is the reason why we're doing this over 2 nights, to try to keep everyone separated. And that could be another reason why they're doing this from multiple locations. You might be able to have only so many people on certain sets. I mean, frankly, Roman Reigns and Goldberg, if they fight at this set, and then you have John Cena and Bray Wyatt fight at that set, I mean, you're really lowering the amount of people that you're having together in one room at one time. Now, if I was to say anything going back now to AEW wrestling from this past week that took place at Daly's Place in Jacksonville in front of nobody, they did do a good job, at least a better job, of filming a wrestling show with no one in attendance. First off, in the 2-hour Dynamite, they didn't air any old matches that took up 30 minutes of time. That's what WWE has been doing as of late. This past week on SmackDown, they aired the WrestleMania 30 match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt in full. On Monday Night Raw, they aired the entire Royal Rumble in full. AEW didn't do that. It was a full wrestling show from start to finish. Now, one thing that I definitely think added to the effect is AEW kept up with the pyro, kept up with the fire and the fireworks of the entrances in the beginning of the show. And the camera was focused on the entranceway. And that's something WWE might or should steal. Because this past week, and just like every other show, they have a side view, just like you're used to watching wrestling, where the entranceway is over either to the left or to the right. But AEW knew this week that there was no fans in attendance, so why have the camera facing where there is nobody? Have the camera view facing the entranceway, you know, the old N64 and PlayStation video game style, where the entranceway stage is in front of you, the ring is right in the center, and that's how it should be, because at least your backdrop is entertaining. AEW had a pretty decent backdrop because they had their set in the backdrop, and if wrestlers came out, you could see them without having to turn the camera. And it just was, I guess, a prettier aesthetic. I mean, you think about the world of baseball, where everyone always wants to put, something cool or something neat out in center field, because if you're sitting at home plate, you want to see a cool aesthetic, whether it be in Pittsburgh, the awesome skyline in center field, or it be in Kansas City with the fountains. The point is, it was a much better aesthetic for television to have the entranceway being in the background and the ring in the center than, an empty arena with no fans. Still, personally, I think that WrestleMania should be postponed. I know that they are way too far now to pull another swerve and actually postpone the event, because if they did postpone the event and hold the event, ticket sales might slump just for the fact that people are wondering, well, what the hell are you going to do? Because in a week's time, you announced that WrestleMania was canceled. Then you announced it was going to take place from the Performance Center. Then you announced that it was going to be 2 nights from multiple locations, pre-taped, nevertheless, and not even live anymore. So if they do then go forward and say that this will take place in the future at a stadium, at an arena, I mean, with so much changing, it's so hard to keep track, and it's so hard to, I guess, be set in one plan. So if WrestleMania tickets went on sale next week for some determined arena, I don't know if I'd jump on them for the fact that, are there going to be a WrestleMania? Is there going to be an event, or is this just another swerve for the time being? Now, there was a big rumor that started earlier this week when it was originally announced that WWE was going to go to the Performance Center and host WrestleMania. It was announced on Monday that they were going to the Performance Center for WrestleMania on April the 5th. And one of the big rumors was that was to satisfy an insurance requirement for WWE to, in good faith, try to find another venue. Hoping if that venue, the Performance Center, also gets shut down, then WWE would be able to mitigate damages when it comes to an insurance claim, and then seek out an actual real venue for the future to have WrestleMania. One of those rumors was for June 7th at Madison Square Garden. Now, Madison Square Garden has reached out and said that they will be holding the WWE house show on June 27th that was originally scheduled to take place today, March the 22nd at Madison Square Garden, or tomorrow, March the 22nd at Madison Square Garden. So the event that was originally scheduled to take place tomorrow afternoon at Madison Square Garden has been rescheduled to take place on June the 27th, which is the Road to WrestleMania, or by June 27th, some sort of maybe Road to SummerSlam house show. But either way, Madison Square Garden says they have heard nothing about hosting WrestleMania 36, and their plans are at this time to hold the rescheduled house show. Now, everything is changing. Certain wrestlers can't get out of their environment. Obviously, certain wrestlers, especially the NXT UK variety, are stuck where they are for the time being. So it looks like they won't be involved in any capacity when it comes to WrestleMania. But the good question is, where does this leave us for NXT? Now, this past week on NXT, there were no live matches. There were some segments. Triple H and Tom Phillips kind of just hosted what we'd expect, I guess, from an NXT that takes place on Christmas Day or a holiday in which, they don't have a live NXT taping. Now, I don't know where this takes us to next week when it comes to NXT, because there are still a few more NXTs. And more importantly, I don't know where this takes us to the next TakeOver. Now, TakeOver has been canceled. The Hall of Fame has been canceled. So where does this leave us with NXT going forward? WrestleMania is quote-unquote still happening because of the fact that a lot of these matches have had the storylines built, and they want to see where all these matches are going to go, and they want to get it over with, because we don't know the environment and we don't know the certainty of WWE holding events in the future. WWE and Vince McMahon's guess, from what I've heard, is that they want to hold WrestleMania now and then maybe start to wean off WWE events going forward after that, once these storylines have concluded. Because there is no certainty of when we'll be able to start live events again, and WWE and Vince McMahon do not like that uncertainty, so they want to hold WrestleMania as soon as possible, get that out of the way, and then going forward, worry about where WWE stands after WrestleMania. Now, with NXT, that seems to still be the case as well, because we had some matches made for TakeOver, and now where do we take these NXT storylines going forward? With no certain event, with no certain TV tapings going forward, where do we take these matches? Now, some people have rumored that some of these matches might take place on the NXT prior to WrestleMania weekend. Some people are saying that this could be pushed out to as far as SummerSlam and the TakeOver before SummerSlam. Some people are rumoring that the Hall of Fame and the speeches might take place on Raw or SmackDown before WrestleMania, and that some people are also rumoring that the Hall of Fame speeches could take place at a rescheduled event in Boston around SummerSlam. Now, again, if you've been following wrestling or anything in the news this past week or this past 2 weeks, rumors have never been more, let's just say, rumors, because everything is changing so rapidly, everything is changing so much that even things that might even not have been rumors and might actually be true still might be changing, meaning that it could have been true that Vince McMahon was reaching out to Madison Square Garden to host WrestleMania in June. It could have been true that WrestleMania was just going to be a one-night event overall, but things are changing so rapidly and things are changing so often that even if they are rumors or even if they aren't rumors, we will never really know for sure until things actually happen. Now, AEW has announced that this next week, which was originally supposed to be Dynamite from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, where they were going to host their quote-unquote Blood and Guts event, it was going to be War Game style between the Elite and the Inner Circle. That will not happen because apparently AEW finds it pretty important to have some of their biggest and most important matches, in front of people, in front of a live audience. So instead of holding Blood and Guts in front of nobody next week in Jacksonville, they will be just hosting a regular Dynamite. It will feature the debut of Matt Hardy, who made his debut on Dynamite to end the show this past Wednesday as a member of the Elite. He will take on Chris Jericho, but as for the Blood and Guts match, or the War Games match, that will not take place this upcoming week on Dynamite. So maybe WWE can take more than just one or two things from AEW in the sense of presentation and or postponing large events for down the line. Again, I can't say this enough. WrestleMania this year is insane. I mean, for all this to have happened right around the biggest show of the year is awful when it comes to fans like myself who were more than excited to be going to Tampa, Florida for WrestleMania, for people who just enjoy WrestleMania as the event that is the biggest and the best in WWE. And I'm not even just talking from a wrestling standpoint, but just the presentation. And I think the thing that disappoints me the most about WrestleMania not taking place in Tampa, other than the fact that I was going to attend the event and that it's not happening, is the fact that I had never been more excited for a theme. Let me explain. So about a year ago, I did a YouTube video for Heel to the Face of 10 places that should host a WrestleMania that haven't. And a part of those places that I mentioned was the themes that could be thrown in with it. I mean, we all saw at WrestleMania 29 when it was at MetLife Stadium the first time, the amazing theme that they used for New York City. We're talking the Statue of Liberty over the ring. We're talking the Brooklyn Bridge, the Empire State Building, and the rest of the New York City skyline as part of the entranceway. The theme for WrestleMania 29 was awesome. And we've seen in New Orleans, the theme for WrestleMania 30 and WrestleMania 34, using the Mardi Gras, using the fleur-de-lis. Awesome themery. That's not a word, folks. Don't steal that. Awesome themes there as well. Or let's make themery a word. Why don't we? But as we move on from the word themery there and start to talk about WrestleMania 36, Tampa, Florida was my number one pick on my top 10 list of places that haven't hosted a WrestleMania that should host a WrestleMania. And while I was talking about Tampa hosting a WrestleMania, in my head and vocally as well, I said what would be awesome about Tampa hosting WrestleMania is to incorporate the pirate theme. Now, the Buccaneers are the football team that plays at Raymond James Stadium, and one thing that they have that is very unique is they have a pirate ship in one of their end zones on the concourse. Now, it shoots off cannons and fireworks and all sorts of stuff whenever the Tampa Bay Buccaneers score a touchdown or a field goal. It's a pretty cool aesthetic at Raymond James Stadium. And what would be awesome, and I mentioned it before, is that it's pretty much a stage piece that's already there. Meaning the pirate ship is already a part of the stadium. So if WWE hosted WrestleMania from Tampa, they could pretty much put their themes and their entranceways and their jumbo screens and their stage designs to incorporate the already existing pirate ship. And it seems to be that that was most likely going to be the case, because when WrestleMania was announced that it was going to be in Tampa, well, as you've seen, the pirate theme was in full force. So not just WrestleMania in Tampa, which I feel is a great place to host WrestleMania, because unlike Orlando, which is actually a small city, even though it does have Disney World and it does have Universal Studios, Orlando itself is a pretty small city. It has the Orlando Magic when it comes to the NBA, but other than that, it's not really any bigger than a Buffalo, New York. What puts Orlando on the map is the Disney World factor and the fact that it's in Florida, which is a nice, warm place. But other than that, it's not a big metropolitan city like Tampa is. Tampa is a big enough city that if it was located in somewhere of a colder climate, it would still be a pretty important city in the U.S. geography because it's got everything going for it. It's got an NBA team, it's got a Major League Baseball team, and it's got an NFL team. Now, I just said NBA team. Scratch that. I meant NHL team. So NHL, Major League Baseball, and NFL. It's got those teams. It's hosted the Super Bowl at Raymond James Stadium many times. Orlando, that is not. The convention center in Tampa is huge. They've got theme parks as well. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Florida landscape, Tampa is almost as close to Disney World as Orlando is close to Disney World. Now, Disney World is probably 30 minutes outside of downtown Orlando, while Disney World is probably 50, maybe to an hour outside of Tampa. So those who want to incorporate Wrestlemania into a Disney World vacation can easily do so. In fact, it was kind of funny because Ring of Honor was set to host an event at the Lakeland Convention Center, or I think it's now called the RP Funding Center, in Lakeland, Florida, just like they did when Wrestlemania was in Orlando. So Lakeland is a city that seems to be right in the smack dab middle between Tampa and Orlando, and it's considered really a suburb of both. I've stayed in Lakeland, Florida when I was going to Tampa for spring training a couple years ago, and I stayed not far from Lakeland, Florida when I went to Wrestlemania 33 in 2017. So Lakeland, Florida seems to be so perfectly right in the middle of the two cities that it was a place where Ring of Honor was hosting a show right before Wrestlemania 33 in Orlando, and it was going to be hosting a show the day before Wrestlemania 36 in Tampa, being drivable from both of those cities. In fact, remember, and it's kind of funny that it hosted the big Ring of Honor show the night before WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. That was the last Ring of Honor appearance of the Hardy Boys before their big debut at WrestleMania the next night. So Tampa, a great location, better than Orlando because it's more of an adult city. Orlando has got a lot of things going on when it comes to theme parks, but for people like myself, Tampa's got the casino, Tampa's got the beach. Orlando doesn't have that. And it just overall has a bigger city feel. Orlando is definitely catering to families. It's a smaller city overall that caters to tourists who want to go to Disney World, while Tampa caters to many walks of life. It has much more culture and much more of an established city feel. Ybor City, for example, is one of my favorite spots in Tampa. It is a neighborhood that is very Cuban themed, lots of cigar bars, lots of cigar stores, lots of nightclubs, and I was looking very much forward to the fact that a lot of World Wrestling Network events such as Kaiju Big Battle and Joey Ryan's Penis Party, all these events were scheduled to take place, and even TNA or Impact Wrestling was going to hold a special TNA kind of reunion night all in Ybor City. So I was looking forward to that. I was looking forward to the fact that the arena in downtown Tampa is a very nice arena to host NXT, Monday Night Raw, the night after WrestleMania. And Raymond James Stadium is an awesome stadium. I've never been inside of it. I've been to Tampa a few times. I've seen the stadium. I was looking forward heavily to Tampa hosting WrestleMania, more so than I was probably New Orleans, and more so than I probably was New York City. For sure, not a big fan of WrestleMania in New York City, so it's utterly disappointing that WrestleMania seems to have gotten it perfect this year. Maybe not match-wise, but theme-wise when it comes to incorporating the pirate theme, incorporating the beach theme, incorporating just the overall, I guess, vacation feel of being a big wrestling spectacle. Unfortunately, we won't get this. In my eyes, I would love for Tampa to host a WrestleMania in the near future. I kind of wish Tampa would host WrestleMania next year, and they would push back WrestleMania in LA for the year after that. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't write contracts, but in the time we're currently living in, I mean, it seems like anything when it comes to contracts or things we're used to can easily be changed and rearranged and rescheduled and postponed, and contracts can easily be rewritten. So who knows where we will even be 1 year from now when WrestleMania 37 is scheduled to take place at SoFi Stadium, which as of right now isn't even done being built, outside of LA in Inglewood, California. So WrestleMania right now stands a 2-night show from the Performance Center or various locations on April 4th and April 5th. Rob Gronkowski is going to be the quote-unquote host of this event. He already made a match on SmackDown, Baron Corbin and Elias are going to face off at WrestleMania by Rob Gronkowski's wishes, I guess. So he's playing host / general manager of WrestleMania. They've already released some Gronkmania t-shirts on WWEshop.com. Now, I don't know how soon you're going to get those shirts because I don't know the work schedule of those who are working in the WWE Shop warehouses. So I don't know if you're going to order these WrestleMania shirts and they're going to get to your house in time for WrestleMania. I know that Amazon.com has stopped delivery of pretty much non-essential items. So I think it's kind of not the best for WWE to try to be releasing new merchandise at this time. And I stick with my guns and I stick with my story before. WWE, they do a lot of things that outside of just a wrestling aspect, I don't understand, and this is one of them. Why they can't postpone the event, why they can't cancel the event until further notice. You know, a lot of people are saying you don't know where Raymond James Stadium is going to be in the future, but knowing that Raymond James Stadium is really only the home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I can only imagine that while there's probably motocross events and other big-time events that go to Raymond James Stadium over the summer, there's got to be a free weekend at Raymond James Stadium in May, in June, in July, and even in August. There's got to be a free weekend at that stadium to re-host WrestleMania there. And even if they can't host it there, there's got to be free weekends at many places that WWE now owes having to go back to for the fact that most house shows and live events are being canceled and postponed because, well, you can't have them in front of no fans, right? You can't have a house show in front of no fans, but you can have WrestleMania in front of no fans. Now, I understand WrestleManias on TV and house shows are not, but, I mean, as any wrestling documentary you've ever watched said, WrestleMania is part wrestling, part spectacle, and 100% fan. The fans make WrestleMania, and I'm just very curious how this WrestleMania, it's going to be a spectacle. It's going to be interesting nevertheless, whatever happens in Tampa or at the Performance Center or wherever they are filming matches. We've seen some pre-taped matches when it comes to wrestling before. If you're familiar with the House of Horrors match a couple years ago, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton at Backlash after WrestleMania in Orlando, or you're familiar with the Hollywood Backlot Brawl between Roddy Piper and Goldust. Now, that was a straight-up pre-taped match as well, where they drove around the streets of LA, even stole some footage from the O.J. Simpson car chase. Is that what we're in for when it comes to WrestleMania 36? A lot of silly things like that. Are we in for some car chases? Are we in for that maybe Hooters brawl between John Cena and Bray Wyatt that they've been advertising? WWE has done some pre-tape stuff before, and they've even done pre-tape stuff for WrestleMania, as I just mentioned, WrestleMania 12. But this will definitely be new. This will be something we've never seen before, but as I'm saying this, there is no March Madness going on, and there's no spring training going on, so saying that this will be something we've never seen before is not just new to wrestling, it's new to everything that's going on in the world. So we'll try to keep you abreast of everything that is new in the world of professional wrestling, but one hope that I can end this show on is the fact that they have started some live wrestling events in Japan with audience in attendance. Now, Japan is kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to us here in the United States, where they are starting to lax and go the other direction, where they were kind of on a total lockdown, but now they are starting to have people in attendance. They're checking their temperatures, they're checking to make sure that everybody's healthy, they're keeping crowds still to a minimum. A wrestling show that took place this past week in Japan had attendance of about 950 people. Now, it was a big wrestling show, and without any of this, they were expecting maybe a few thousand. But they did say, because of circumstances, that 975 people in attendance was still pretty good because of the circumstance. So they are starting to let people in. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is rushing out to go to these events, as you saw, as I just mentioned. 975,000 people went to an event that it was supposed to have originally scheduled thousands of people. Will that be the landscape here when we start to have events, live again in front of audiences? Will everyone rush out to fill stadiums, or will it be slow and, little by little, smaller crowds before we finally get back to the big ones? I guess only time will tell on that here in the States, but a good sign in Japan that they are starting to go the other direction when it comes to this coronavirus outbreak and start to let fans in slowly again before we can return things to normal worldwide. Now, hopefully we can have Brandon Clements join us again before this whole thing is out. Hopefully this whole thing will be out sooner than later, but nevertheless, Follow us on Twitter at Heel to the Face. I know we haven't been posting a lot of Wrestlemania stuff, getting you excited for the big event because, well, everything's been going on. Frankly, the big event of Wrestlemania, it's not so much a big event anymore, in my eyes. Kind of took the air out of the balloon when it comes to Wrestlemania. But, maybe we will return to the countdown of best 36 WrestleMania matches. I know we didn't continue our countdown this week, but nevertheless, we will have a show next week. From where and when? Not sure yet, but we'll have another show in the future. For this week's edition of the Heel to Face podcast, my name is Jared Wicks. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KRockJared. And again, follow the program at Heel to the Face on Twitter. We are on SoundCloud. We are on Spotify. We are on iHeartRadio. So find us on all those places and more. Until next week, this has been the Heel to the Face podcast.